DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police blotter, weather forecast, and more with no paywall. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
From the Heart Media Group newsroom and DeWittDailyNews.com, I'm Ben Hubbard with this expanded morning newscast. Good morning and thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Ben Hubbard. The news is brought to you by Baum Chevy Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters, as well as Connexus, offering fiber internet in Clinton. Click their icon on DeWittDailyNews.com to find out more. Last year, the DeWitt County Board's Finance Committee was approached by PSI, the provider of ambulance service to DeWitt County, about financial challenges it faces. In a response to that, the DeWitt County Board last week approved an adjustment in its payment schedule for the dollars levied for the service. Board Chair Joe Whitty indicates this will allow them to reduce the levy, but increase what they pay out to PSI.
You know, we talked a little bit last year about when we had Dee in for the budget. Even we had an issue with our budget, and we've had some problems with the PSI being able to provide coverage at the same contracted price that we've had them, because their expenses have gone up. Right. And I think this was more a adjustment of how and when we pay. We don't collect taxes until that first installment in July, and yet we were based on a December to December fiscal year. We were having to set the levy such that we could have enough in the fund to be able to pay what we need as a county. We, basically through some adjustment to how we pay quarterly. It was going to allow us to reduce that levy a little bit, maybe increase what we're paying so that we don't lose the ambulance service contract that we had. And so we had to formalize that now through a couple of different agreements where we're essentially adjusting the payment schedule to quarterly. That allows us to pay the larger portion of what we're going to have to pay as taxes were collected, rather than have to levy so much so that we can make that first installment. I think the fees did go up a little bit, but the main change here was the timing of those payments.
PSI informed the Finance Committee that they are operating at a loss. Whitty admits the county is in a bind because they have maxed out the levy it can assess for the ambulance service.
We still need to work through that contract with them, right? They're not at a point where I think they are able to cover all of their expenses to feel like that they can run a business. That some counties, they're potentially running at a loss, and we need to continue to work with them. I think that's going to be something that has to continue in the coming years. This was what we could do. We are at a limit of what we can set that levy to collect, and so our hands are somewhat tied there. This was a way to be able to increase a little bit what we were paying for those services, and yet not exceed what we can even charge from a levy. But yeah, the work's not done there. I think this is obviously something that we're going to have to continue to look at in the coming years and come up with a contract that works for them and allows us to keep their services and yet stay within the tax levy that we're required to.
Whitty is optimistic that the two sides will be able to find a way to keep the service in DeWitt County. The ambulance service in some parts of rural Illinois has gone away because of the rising costs they are dealing with. Coming up shortly on this expanded newscast, Central Illinois leaders discuss kids, cell phones, and school safety planning. Mental health is a major focus for school districts around the area, and a group of Piatt County students is doing their best to support their peers. Bement High School senior Emma Garluzzo told the Heart Media Group on the WHOW High School Road Tour that Lifesavers is a group centered around students supporting students, and notes they put a big focus on suicide prevention.
Lifesavers is a peer-run kind of counseling type club. We specialize in mental health and suicidal awareness, suicidal prevention, because statistics have shown that students are more likely to go to their peers than to a teacher or a counselor. So we're trying to prevent, suicidal deaths. It was created by Judy Ashby, who adapted the curriculum from, I think, Belleville East High School after her son's suicide, and it's spread from there. It's in Illinois usually, mostly. We're all in like a circle because everyone's supposed to face each other. It's supposed to be a very warm, welcoming type meeting. We discuss like current problems that are happening, current things that we want to try and support or, fundraise.
Garluzzo says they host service opportunities like highway or school cleanups to give back to the community. She adds that they will be busy with plenty of opportunities for students to join them in serving the community during the second semester.
We talk about cleaning up a lot. Like we clean up the highway 105. We do a lot of lock-ins, a lot of extra training for the people in Lifesavers who, need that training so that they can help others. We're with Monticello. It's Monticello Bement Lifesavers. Monticello has done some, I believe. We don't specifically do any fundraising, but we do a lot of service projects. Like we put up Easter egg lane in Bement for people just to bring that joy. We clean up the highway. We're trying to just help where we can. We're cleaning the highway. We're doing a lock-in, so extra training for the people in Lifesavers. We're doing Easter egg lane, where it's a lot of service opportunities. I definitely don't think we deny people helping out.
New members are elected to the club each year, and Garluzzo explains that in order for them to have the tools necessary to complete their goals, students can participate in the Lifesavers Retreat. She says it is 3 days and 2 nights of learning essential and sometimes life-saving skills.
We elect new members every year, and then for those members to have the tools and skills needed to help and counsel other peers, we take them to Allerton, and it's a 3-day, 2-night retreat, and it is basically every single skill or tool you'd ever need to help students who are dealing with mental illness and suicidal thoughts and feelings. It's a lot of vulnerability. It's a lot of because you have to get the students comfortable with each other. So it's a big kind of counseling session, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's really rewarding. I definitely have gotten a lot of good feelings from this club, this group. I enjoy helping people. If you enjoy helping people, you should become a part of it.
Garluzzo encourages those interested in joining to visit the Monticello Bement Lifesavers Facebook and Instagram pages. You're listening to the WHOW Morning Show. Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors.
Happy New Year from all of us here at Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton and Farmer City. This is Scott Baum. Most of our customers trade for a different SUV or truck because their needs change each year. That's good because we have transportation options for you. Plus, we need your trade. Our selection of top quality pre-owned trades come from you. Come see our ever-changing Chevrolet and Buick inventory today. Chevrolet, together, let's drive. BaumChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
Experience the power of better connection with Connexus Fiber Internet. Connexus delivers ultra-fast, reliable speeds to keep you connected at the speed of life. Whether you're working from home, streaming your favorite shows, or gaming with your friends, Connexus has you covered. Say goodbye to buffering and dropped calls and say hello to fiber fast internet. Ready to upgrade your connection? Sign up today by clicking the Connexus icon at DeWittDailyNews.com. Nothing connects us like Connexus.
News time is 18 minutes after the top of the hour. You're listening to the WHOW Morning Show. A coalition of Central Illinois leaders who do emergency planning for schools recently discussed how to utilize students who carry a cell phone in those procedures. On the WHOW Morning Show Wednesday, Monticello Police Chief Rob Ross told the Hart Media Group the Regional Office of Education regularly brings students together from schools in DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties to do planning scenarios for emergencies within the school system.
So really, everything started around 1999, the Columbine school shooting, and law enforcement came around and said we need a better way of dealing with these issues. So then, of course, I started my career in law enforcement back in 2004. So it went into active shooter, and that's how you go in different formations, and then it turned in from formations and getting people on your side to you have to go in and stop the threat. Well, then as that progressed in the late 2000s, early 2010s, it came down to law enforcement knows how to deal with a threat. The fire department knows how to deal with a fire. The medical people know how to deal with the medical issues. And honestly, really, much like the issue, I believe it was in Washington, Illinois, you have a tornado. And, we have to respond to that. We know how to respond to these incidents. But what we were getting caught up on is, okay, we dealt with a threat, we dealt with a fire, we dealt with a medical issue, we dealt with straight line winds taking the roof off. But now we have anywhere, for our schools, it's 300 to maybe 700 kids in a school, depending on, Whiteheath Elementary School, middle school, or high school. And how are we going to reunify these kids if it's not safe because of weather, fire, whatever here? How are we going to get these kids back to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever they stay with?
According to Chief Bross, the coalition recently heard from an FBI agent regarding youth and their cell phones, specifically how those have become detrimental to student safety.
So the regional office has really spearheaded this and hired a school safety director, which has really taken this and run with it. So we meet usually about the third or fourth Thursday, the month, kind of depending on how things sit in the calendar. And a lot of times it's school reunification, but like last week, they had an agent with the FBI come in and talk about some juvenile issues that kind of center around internet usage, cell phones, because I tell you what, it's hard for me to go through too many schools, and that's whether that's rural, urban, or in between, and see someone in middle school, or if not a little bit, younger, with a cell phone. Not so much on days like today, but I tell you what, in the spring, summer, and fall, once the kids get out, you see a lot of phones pop out once they get out of the school. So last week's meeting really centered on internet safety, kind of making sure, and what we're seeing more and more with some of the juvenile calls that my wife, Lindsay Bross, she's a school resource officer for the county, and then myself see, is we get a lot of issues over cell phones. Mm-hmm. You give a kid a cell phone, even an adult, you give an adult a cell phone and it opens up the world, with
sometimes the adults are worse than the kids.
Yes, we do find that out, because it's one thing, I'm not a big fan of technology, but there's people older than I that are not familiar with a lot of the internet safety, and something will happen and they'll call us and say, oh my gosh, can you please get this image down? Can you get my money back? Can you? And it's really difficult too, because once you send something, over the internet for any reason, you lose all control over it. You really do.
Chief Bross notes the conversation shifted to at least utilizing students' access to their cell phones in reunification plans.
It used to be, we hunkered down in school. Something happens, no matter what, we're going to barricade ourselves in. And then we kind of got away from that and went to the ALAH method, which is just like another term for run, hide, fight. If you can run out of the school and away from danger, you do that. If you can't run away, it's not safe, but you can lock down and barricade yourself in a room, you do that. Last case scenario, if something happens and it's right next to you, then you fight like heck and then get away. What we learned is, okay, let's say we have an incident and we go through ALAH, we go through run, hide, fight, and we have kids that just run and doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They run away from danger and they go to where it's safe. Mm-hmm. What do we do? And how do we know that they're going to be safe? Because when we do our reunification, relocation, we're taking them from a school and we're putting them in the Monticello church.
Mhm.
How do we know? We're going to do a head count, so we'll know who made it there, who didn't. And then we start going through and saying, okay, Joe Smith and Susie Smith aren't here. Where are they? What we found is the school doesn't really they have mom and dad's phone number, they have grandma and grandpa's phone number, but they really don't have the kid's phone number. We're looking at ways to maybe enter that information into, and not a system that law enforcement would have or anything like that, but if you have an emergency, we really need to know how you're, if you're safe, where you're at, so we can check on you.
A portion of the presentation by the FBI agent brought to their meeting also discussed the dangers of kids' unfettered access to their cell phones and some of the dangers kids face online today. Some impressive totals from last weekend's winter storm moving through Illinois.
Southern Illinois was the winner by snowfall totals, especially the areas between I-64 and Highway 13. That area was most places picked up at least 9 inches. Some of the highest 24-hour totals we saw were 14 inches in Crawford County, 13 inches in Jackson, Hamilton counties, Perry County. And then we saw also 5 counties that had locations that may have set new one-day snowfall records. So I was Hamilton, Jackson, Richland, Wayne, and White. So of course, all across that kind of southern, south central part of the state. I say may have broken because the National Weather Service will make that official once they verify those observations. But that gives you an idea. I mean, some of these records go back to the early 1900s. So it's pretty rare when we get that heavy of snowfall across that area. And then, like you mentioned, it brought also pretty cold conditions, some pretty intense cold. But it wasn't just Southern Illinois that picked up snow. Here in Central Illinois, we had anywhere between 5 and 10 inches of snowfall across kind of the central part of the state. And then it really tapered off as you went north.
Illinois State climatologist Trent Ford says as temperatures stay below freezing, snowpack could hang around for a while, especially north of Illinois Route 13. An Illinois congressman is making his stance clear on a United States takeover of Greenland. Eric Sorensen, who serves on the Armed Services Committee that oversees funding for the Department of War, says the idea of a U.S. takeover would send the U.S. down a dangerous road.
This is about money. It's about power. It's about the wealth that's under the ground in Greenland. That's what it's about. We have Alaska, for God's sakes. Alaska, at its closest point, is like 27 miles from Russia. We have more military bases in Greenland than we need. And I will tell you, today, I am meeting with the Danish ambassador to the United States about this very issue. Because what Trump is he's going down a dangerous road. It's a bumpy road, because if you run the risk of breaking NATO up, we're not going to have the allies that we need if China or Russia decide to do something very, very stupid.
While in Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum, President Trump announced a framework for a future deal with Greenland. However, the Trump administration failed to provide details on what the framework entailed. Trump administration officials say the U.S. needs Greenland for international security. Now for your local obituaries. Ruby Renee Brad, 9 years old, of Clinton, passed away at 1:01 a.m. January 27th at HSHS St. John's Children's Hospital in Springfield. Services will be 10 a.m. Saturday, February 7th at First Christian Church in Clinton, with Stephen Brad officiating. Private family burial will be at a later date. Visitation will be 4 to 8 p.m. Friday, February 6th at the church. Calvert Funeral Home in Clinton is in charge of arrangements. Memorials may be directed to Ruby's Garden in care of Stephen Brad. Susan L. Allhands, 74, of Clinton, formerly of Watseka, Illinois, passed away at 10:41 a.m. January 27th at OSF St. Joseph Medical Center in Bloomington. Services will be 12 p.m. Monday, February 2nd at Bayer Funeral Home in Watseka, Illinois, with Pastor Jeff Elliott officiating. Burial will follow at Iroquois Memorial Park Cemetery in Watseka. Visitation will be 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Monday at Bayer Funeral Home. Calvert Funeral Home in Clinton is in charge of arrangements. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to a charity of the donor's choice. Joan K. Joni Mollett, 79, of Weldon, Illinois, passed away at 9:42 January 25th at Decatur Memorial Hospital. Calvert Funeral Home in Clinton is in charge of arrangements. Online condolences may be made at calvertmemorial.com. Get news anytime from your computer or your mobile device from DeWitt County's #1 source for news, sports, police blotter, obituaries, and more. It's DeWittDailyNews.com.
With SRN News, I'm Rich Thomason in Washington. The FBI is investigating allegations of discrepancies in the 2020 election in Georgia. The Bureau has served a search warrant at Fulton County, Georgia's election headquarters, seeking ballots from 2020. President Trump standing by his claim of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 contest. Disagreements over immigration enforcement could result in a partial government shutdown at the end of the week. Hundreds of thousands of utility customers remain in the dark this morning following the big winter storm earlier this week. Power is out as bitterly cold temperatures persist. A man's under arrest. He allegedly repeatedly rammed his car into the Chabad Lubavitch World Headquarters in New York City. The Hasidic Jewish Center was damaged, but no one was hurt. The Dow futures up 60 points. NASDAQ futures 58 points higher. More details at srnnews.com.
Financial Group is not a law firm.
Ask yourself this question. Is it really worth holding on to that timeshare that you know you need to get rid of? Here's the truth. The average maintenance fee just went up over 17%. That could have been 117%, and there's nothing you can do about it. When you buy a timeshare, you give them a blank check for annual maintenance and assessment fees. I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group. For 15 years, I've helped over 50,000 families cancel their timeshare. Not sell it, not transfer it, cancel it. Did you buy a timeshare because they told you it was a great investment and your maintenance fees would never go up? That's a lie. Are you ready to get rid of your timeshare once and for all? Simply call us and I'll send you our timeshare exit kit that explains all your options for cancellation.
Call Wesley now for your timeshare exit kit. 800-366-6161. That's 800-366-6161. 800-366-6161.
From the Hart Media Group Sports Desk, IL Sports Wire, and DeWittDailyNews.com, I'm Ben Hubbard with this local sports report. The Argenta-Oreana Bombers came back in the fourth quarter to beat the Arthur Levington Atwood Hammond Knights by a final score of 50-48 on Wednesday night at Blue Ridge High School in the Lincoln Prairie Conference Boys Basketball Tournament. The Bombers led after the first quarter 15-12, but the Knights took the lead 28-23 going into halftime. Argenta-Oreana closed the deficit to 42-39 after the third and held Arthur Levington Atwood Hammond to just 6 points in the fourth. Argenta-Oreana was led by Carter Logue, who scored 16 points, including 12 from distance. Isaiah Parks had 13, while Jackson Finch added 10 points. Will Hillegas led all scorers with 20 points for ALAH. Cruz Hale had 14 points, and Marcus Otto put up 8. With the win, the Bombers improved to 8-13 and 3-3 in the Lincoln Prairie Conference, while the Knights fall to 5-17 and 1-3 in the LPC. Late last year, the IHSA passed a referendum that added 16 teams per class to the high school football playoffs. Argenta-Oreana Athletic Director Mike Williams explains that while the new playoff expansion may help the Bombers make postseason appearances in the future, he feels that teams with a less favorable record will not like the change if they have to face stronger programs in the first round.
Yeah, there's still a lot going on. So IHSA put out to the member schools last fall in November, December, that an expansion proposal that did expand. So they're adding 16 classes or 16 schools per class. So 48 schools per class will now make the playoffs, with the top 16 getting a bye in the week one of the playoffs. In order to accommodate that, they have now done away with the week 0 scrimmage that's been in place, and then move that to make that the new week 1. All this is basically focused on making sure that they finish the state championship games over Thanksgiving weekend. As far as my feelings on it, with the new IHSA playoff system, we're very optimistic that we'll be in the playoffs next year. I don't know how many coaches or teams are going to be really excited about if you're 2-7, 3-9, or 2-7, 3-6, going to the playoffs and opening up with somebody that's 9-0 or 8-1. I understand making the playoffs does a lot for community and support, but at the same time, I kind of get the feeling that we're heading towards the everybody gets a trophy mentality, and I'm not completely sold on that, to be quite honest with you.
The Legislative Commission held a special meeting on Tuesday night to approve the football practice start date to August 5th, 5 days earlier than in seasons past.
Now, the latest with that is just recently when we got back from Christmas break, the Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, has been against starting football earlier with the same start date on practices. So there's an emergency meeting of the Legislative Commission coming up at the end of this month. They're going to present starting football another 5 days earlier in order to get the students the 12 days of practice that are recommended by the Sports Medicine Advisory Committee. They changed the down week. That is now the week of July 4th. I don't know that was necessary. Schools could have done that completely on their own. And that's something that we did here at Argenta several years ago, and our families liked it. Our coaches were fine with it because most of them gave most of the week off anyway. But our families loved it just because they can plan their vacations and not have to worry about getting a kid to practice on around the 4th. But what that does is now that they're talking about moving this start of football up to the middle of the week prior, which for the last 20 years has been the shutdown week, is really going to mess with kids and families' vacation plans. I guarantee you there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the state that have planned cruises, have planned vacations, that's got flights booked, that's got VRBOs booked for their vacations during shutdown. And now the IHSA is coming in and making this change with 7 months notice, and that's not fair. And now we're going to tell a kid that's had a cruise or a vacation booked for 2 years that you can't play in the first football game because you don't have 12 days of practice because we've changed the dates on you. I think that's very detrimental to kids, and I don't like the way that's played out. If they wanted to make these changes, I think that it could have easily been implemented a year down the road. It would have gave plenty of time for people to make those adjustments to vacation plans, coaches to make different plans for their summer schedules, and those type of things. I just think the whole process has been a little bit rushed. I understand the goal of some folks is to make the playoffs, and if we have to expand it and start the season earlier, that's fine. I understand your push. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I just think it was rushed, and it's created a lot of havoc for schools, for parents, for coaches, and most of all the kids.
The IHSA is introducing a bye week for the top 16 teams per class at the start of the playoffs. Williams sees both sides of this and notes that some teams may want to rest their players and get healthy, while others will want to keep their momentum rolling and not have the break. A team that qualifies for the bye week will have a season that is 2 weeks longer than in previous years, and Williams fears that could cause more athletes to face burnout.
You think about this. If you're a team that makes a deep playoff run, your football season just got 2 weeks longer because you're starting a week earlier, and now basically you're starting 2 weeks earlier because now you also get that bye week thrown in, which really, we talk about burning kids out, and we're talking football now. You're going to be starting the 1st of August, which also presents its issues with the heat accommodation that we have to put in. And if you make a title run, you could play 15 games and you're not done until November. You're at the end of November at Thanksgiving. So I just don't know how well it was thought out. I understand there was people pushing for change, but I think the rush has created more issues. As a conference, we worked well together, and we were able to get the schedule switched up and lined up pretty quickly after those changes came out. So we don't have to change homecoming. We don't have to change senior night that's been on the calendar, those type of things. It'll change our summer stuff a little bit just because, obviously we've had the week of the 4th in our schedule as a lockout period. But one of the things that I'm concerned with and I'll be working with the coaches with over the summer is just it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that without that lockout period or shutdown period, you can go basically now from, let's just say, July 6th, July 10th, somewhere in there, straight through. With practices the way it's set up without having that shutdown period. And I think that's detrimental. Nothing's set in stone, but I'll be, strongly encouraging our coaches to take a week, at least 5 days off prior to the start of seasons, just to give those kids that break. If nothing else, not necessarily just a physical break, but more of a mental break.
Area athletic directors and coaches have had mixed feelings about the announcements from the IHSA. Chase Walker's 21 points helped Illinois State defeat Murray State 70-65 on Wednesday. Walker also contributed 5 rebounds for the Redbirds, who improved to 15-7 and 7-4 in the Missouri Valley Conference. Ty Pence scored 12 points while finishing 6 of 11 from the floor and added 5 rebounds. Mason Clabo had 10 points and shot 4 for 7, including 2 for 3 from beyond the arc. The Racers fall to 16-6 and 8-3 in the MVC. They were led by Frederick King, who posted 19 points, 11 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Murray State also got 15 points and 3 steals from Javon Jackson. Illinois State went into the half ahead of Murray State 35-29. Walker scored 8 points in the half. Illinois State used a 9-0 second half run to break a 45-45 tie and take the lead at 54-45 with 9 minutes and 19 seconds left in the half before finishing off the victory. Walker scored 13 second half points. Aaron Nesmith made a go-ahead reverse layup with 13.9 seconds left and blocked Kobe White's attempt from close range with 2.9 seconds remaining, and the Indiana Pacers rallied from a 14-point fourth quarter deficit to beat the Chicago Bulls 113-110 on Wednesday night. Pascal Siakam scored 20 points and Andrew Nembhard had 18. Jarace Walker added 16. Benedict Mathurin had 15 and Nesmith finished with 14 for the NBA worst Pacers, who improved to 3-0 against Chicago this season. Indiana has won 2 of 3, having beaten defending champion Oklahoma City in an NBA Finals rematch on Friday night. The Thunder have the league's best record, while the Pacers have plummeted to the bottom of the standings following Tyrese Halliburton's torn Achilles tendon in Game 7 of the Finals. Nikola Vucevic scored 25 points and Mattis Buzelis had 20 for the Bulls, who lost their second straight to fall 1 game under 500 at 23-24. Chicago led 101-87 on a layup by Jalen Smith with 7 minutes and 14 seconds to go, but the Pacers responded with an 18-4 run, and Jay Huff's three-pointer with 2 minutes left it tied all at 105 all. Vucevic's three-pointer with 33.5 seconds left gave the Bulls their last lead at 110-109. Johnny Furphy hit 2 free throws for the final margin, which was the Pacers' biggest lead of the game. Chicago's Josh Giddey finished with 7 assists to surpass 2,000 for his career. The 23-year-old became the 15th player in NBA history to reach that milestone at age 23 or younger. The Bulls will host Miami on Thursday night, while the Pacers host Atlanta on Saturday night. In more scores from around the NBA last night, the Cleveland Cavaliers beat the LA Lakers 129-99, while the Atlanta Hawks took down the Boston Celtics 117-106. The Toronto Raptors fell to the New York Knicks 119-92, while the Orlando Magic beat the Miami Heat 133-124. The Charlotte Hornets took down the Memphis Grizzlies 112-97, and the Dallas Mavericks fell to the Minnesota Timberwolves 118-105. Golden State beat the Utah Jazz 140-124, and the San Antonio Spurs took down the Houston Rockets 111-99. In scores from around the NHL last night, the New York Islanders beat the New York Rangers 5-2. The Ottawa Senators took down the Colorado Avalanche 5-2. And the Columbus Blue Jackets beat the Philadelphia Flyers 5-3. In the NCAA, number 25 St. John beat Butler 92-70, while number 19 Florida beat South Carolina 95-48, and number 10 Houston took down TCU 79-70. Get highlights of your local high school program by finding IL SportsWire on your preferred social media platforms, and get local sports anytime at DeWittDailyNews.com.